What if I told you that one of the most famous luxury brands in the world was built by a boy who once had nothing? Not money, not comfort, not even enough food to eat. Before the name Louis Vuitton became a symbol of wealth and elegance, it belonged to a child who knew only struggle. This is not simply a story about fashion or business. It is the story of pain, survival, courage, and the power of refusing to surrender. Louis Vuitton was born in 1821 in a small village in eastern France. His family was poor, very poor. His father worked as a carpenter, building furniture and wooden objects by hand. His mother made hats for local women. They worked hard every day, but even then, money was never enough. Their home was small and cold. Rain leaked through the roof. Winters were harsh. Some nights the family slept in freezing temperatures with little food and no comfort. From a very young age, Louis understood that life was difficult. While other children played, he worked beside his father. He carried heavy wood, cleaned tools, and helped however he could. His hands became rough before he was even a teenager. But even in poverty, Louis had something powerful inside him. He had curiosity. Travelers often passed through his village carrying beautiful wooden trunks and elegant luggage. Louis would stare at them and wonder. Those trunks looked like treasures to him. He imagined distant cities, grand adventures, and a life far beyond his poor village. He dreamed of something more. Then tragedy struck. When Louis was only 10 years old, his mother became seriously ill. There were no doctors nearby, no proper medical care, and nothing the family could do. She died soon after. That loss changed everything. His father became emotionally distant, broken by grief. The warmth in their home disappeared. Louis no longer felt like he belonged there. And in that pain, a decision formed in his mind. He would leave. He would build a better life for himself, somehow. At just 13 years old, with no money and no real plan, Louis made the most important decision of his life. He packed a small bag one night and quietly left his village. His destination was Paris. The city was nearly 470 kilometers away. And he walked, step by step, day after day, week after week. The journey took him almost 2 years. Along the way, he slept outside under trees. He begged for food. Sometimes farmers let him work in exchange for a meal. Other times he went hungry. He crossed forests, rivers, and mountains. Rain soaked his clothes. Winter winds cut through his skin. Many people would have turned back. Louis did not. He kept walking because he believed that somewhere ahead a better future was waiting. When he finally reached Paris, he was exhausted, thin, and nearly broken. But the city he saw was not the dream he had imagined. Yes, Paris was beautiful and full of luxury, but it was also harsh, crowded, and unforgiving. For a poor boy with no money, no home, and no connections, Paris was brutal. Louis slept in the streets. He searched desperately for work, going from shop to shop, asking for any opportunity. Again and again he was rejected. No experience, no training, no chance. Still, he refused to quit. Then, one day, everything changed. Louis saw a man struggling to carry a large, heavy trunk into a workshop. Without hesitation, he ran over and helped him lift it. Inside that workshop were rows of elegant travel trunks, beautifully made, polished, and carefully crafted. Louis stared in amazement. It was exactly the kind of work he had dreamed about. The owner of the workshop noticed him. He looked at the young boy and asked, "Can you make trunks?" Louis answered honestly, "No, but I can learn." That answer changed his life. The owner gave him a chance. At first, Louis did simple tasks, sweeping floors, cleaning tools, carrying materials. It was not glamorous work, but Louis did everything with discipline and focus. He watched the craftsmen closely. He studied every movement, and at night, after everyone left, he stayed behind to practice. He taught himself by observing. He failed, tried again, failed again, improved. Slowly, his skill began to grow. The workshop owner noticed. Soon, Louis was no longer just cleaning. He was learning to build. He learned how to shape wood with precision, how to stitch leather perfectly, how to design trunks that were not only beautiful, but practical. Years passed. The poor village boy who once slept in the streets was becoming one of the finest trunk makers in Paris. Customers began asking for him by name. They trusted his work. They admired his craftsmanship. And soon his talent reached the highest levels of society. One day, an extraordinary customer entered the workshop. It was Empress Eugenie, the wife of Napoleon III and one of the most powerful women in France. She needed travel luggage unlike anything that existed. Elegant, practical, modern. And Louis Vuitton had an idea. Traditional travel trunks at that time had one major problem. They were bulky, heavy, and had rounded tops. That rounded shape made them difficult to stack during travel, especially on long journeys by carriage or train. They were inconvenient, awkward, and outdated. Louis believed he could do better. He proposed something completely different, a flat-topped trunk. Simple, elegant, easy to stack. He also replaced heavy leather with a lighter, waterproof canvas, making the trunk more practical without sacrificing beauty. It was a radical idea for the time. No one had designed luggage this way before. But when the Empress saw the finished product, she was amazed. The trunk was sleek, lightweight, and unlike anything on the market. She loved it. And with that single moment, Louis Vuitton's life changed forever. He became the personal trunk maker to the Empress of France. That royal approval instantly elevated his reputation. The wealthiest people in Paris wanted what the Empress had. Aristocrats, nobles, and elite travelers all began ordering custom trunks from him. But Louis understood something important. As long as he worked for someone else, his future would always be limited. So he took another great risk. He left the workshop where he had trained for years and opened his own business. He rented a small space in Paris and placed his name above the door. Louis Vuitton, Maletier, trunk maker. He had little money, few tools, no safety net, only his skill, his discipline, and his belief in his vision. The early days were difficult. He worked alone for long hours, handcrafting every piece himself. Some nights he barely slept. Every trunk had to be perfect. Then disaster struck again. War broke out in France. The economy collapsed. Wealthy families fled Paris. Luxury spending disappeared almost overnight. Orders stopped. His shop became silent. The business he had fought so hard to build stood on the edge of failure. Many people would have closed the doors and given up. Louis did not. He cut costs, worked harder, waited patiently. And when the war ended, his patience was rewarded. Travel returned. Wealthy clients came back. And this time, demand exploded. His trunks had become the standard of luxury travel. People no longer saw them as simple luggage. They saw them as symbols of sophistication and status. Louis expanded his workshop. He hired craftsmen. He trained apprentices. And his small business began turning into a serious company. But what made Louis truly different was not just his craftsmanship. It was his strategy. He understood that luxury is not built by selling to everyone. Luxury is built by selling to the few. Louis focused only on elite customers. He targeted aristocrats, wealthy businessmen, powerful families, and world travelers. He knew that if the rich carried his products, everyone else would admire them. He never tried to be cheap. He never lowered his standards. He believed his name should stand for excellence, and excellence must remain exclusive. That strategy helped turn his company into one of the most respected brands in France. Soon, owning a Louis Vuitton trunk meant more than simply owning luggage. It meant you had status, taste, money, influence. Louis Vuitton had transformed his name into a symbol of prestige. But his success did not make life easy. He worked constantly. He obsessed over details. He spent endless hours in the workshop perfecting every design. Perfection became his standard. As the company grew, his son, George Vuitton, began learning the business and preparing to continue his father's legacy. Then, in 1892, Louis Vuitton passed away. But before his death, he gave his son one final lesson. Never sell cheap. Never lower the standard. Protect the name. Those words shaped the future of the company. George Vuitton took over and expanded the brand even further. He introduced new products beyond travel trunks, luxury handbags, travel accessories, elegant leather goods. He also faced a new problem: counterfeits. As the brand became more famous, fake Vuitton products began appearing in the market. Cheap copies threatened the company's reputation. So George created one of the most famous design elements in fashion history, the LV monogram. Introduced in 1896, it was designed both as a symbol of prestige and as protection against imitators. It worked. The monogram became iconic, and Louis Vuitton grew stronger than ever. What began as a poor boy's dream was now becoming a global luxury house. But the greatest expansion of all was still ahead.